Hello everybody, my name is Korean Anime, also known as SKD Zark in gaming. Except in Genshin, where I'm known as Mondstadt for now because I'm a huge Albedo simp. Welcome to hopefully a comprehensive guide on how to build your Albedo. I am not the Albedo know-how, I literally just love to build him for fun. I love using him because why would you remain Albedo? Come on, he's pretty. I mean, I wish his hair is better, and I really wish they give him a buff. But then again, I have done CG, 3D polygon stuff before, and I will tell you, this is a miracle. I don't know how they can do it with the 3D models here, and it's insane because I suck at 3D animation. Anyway, besides the point. Concerning Albedo, as this is a lot of relevance, he's become much more relevant as of late stream, especially of what's coming up, supposedly. Not confirmed. Supposedly, we're gonna be focusing on hopefully a build on how this guy works, how to understand him, and if he's the right character for you. Now, in the end, it is all up to you if you want him or not. If you think you need him, go ahead and you can pull from him in the future. If you don't think you need him, you don't have to. And again, like every other character, you can technically build him however you like. You can build him, with more support capabilities in mind or more DPS capabilities in mind. The thing about Albedo is he is very versatile. His role is technically as a sub DPS, a support in that he provides extra damage on top of your normal damage, and one of the easiest ways to showcase this is with his skill. You literally just put his skill down, and you just swap out. And then any damage you do to your enemies, any attack will do damage to your enemies. His flower is going to do additional damage. And I'll go into later why Anjulie is extremely strong in this regard with Albedo. Some of you probably already know, but I'll go in more depth later with team comps. But Albedo is literally like a geoofficial. He helps you just do way more damage on top of your normal damage. Now, as a geo unit, he does focus on crystallized reactions, which is not usually the most optimized reaction people usually want, especially in reaction comps. The thing about the crystallized is it does provide a good shield that will help a little bit with defensive capabilities if you don't have like a really strong healer or other shielder like Zhongli. And again, with Zhongli, Albedo becomes much stronger, but we'll get into that later. So Albedo on his own, you can run him on mono geo comps, especially with crystallized, because there is a passive I'll go into later where he actually boosts reaction comps. Now, other characters do it better, but he does help in that regard if you don't have set characters. So who is Albedo exactly? Well, obviously, aside from lore, I'm not going to go too much into the lore. He is, again, a sub DPS. Geo unit, he's a sword user, so in melee means he will be a bit more limited against certain enemies. And of course, he won't help much against enemies that are immune to Geo, like Geo Slimes, Geo Specters, etc. So Geo Specter specialists as they fly. His kit regards mostly depends on, of course, it depends on his skill, depends on his burst, depends on his autos. It depends on how you want to build him. And again, he's very versatile in how you want to build him. Their most popular build is his defense. It's the defense build. So defense build focuses on his skill. If you go to his skill, I have him triple crowned. At level 10, he scales up. His Transient Blossoms scale up at 240% defense. So this is basically, you can easily reach up, if you have like 1800 defense plus on your Albedo, you can easily reach at least like 10k each 2 seconds on the field with his skill. And of course, with a low cooldown of 4 seconds, that he rivals Bennett in like having one of the shortest skill cooldowns in the game. And the duration is 30 seconds, so this is literally 100% uptime. You can literally just again, place it down on field, swap out to your main DPS for a few seconds, use your bursts, go for your rotations, and then swap back in again and apply it again and again. The thing usually people don't note about a skill is the proc itself. So you see the first part, which is skill damage. That's when he procs it. So when he activates the skill down on the field, that will scale off attack. That never scales off his defense. So there is a part of skill that does scale off attack, but people don't usually mention it. So when they mean defense, they're talking about the Transient Blossom damage that's going to proc every 2 seconds when you hit enemies. Albedo also becomes stronger in this when you unlock his first passive, Calcite Might. Now the transmute blossoms generated by skill. Every time you hit an enemy, they'll deal 25% more damage to opponents whose HP is below 50%. So the weaker the enemies, the more damage his blossoms do, which is really nice. For a defense build, you're obviously going to go for a defense stance, and Albedo is really nice. And being one of the few characters in the game, I think aside from Xinyan, Noelle, and a couple others, future others, that rely on defense for their builds. So, you can go for a defense stance, you can go for a defense goblet if you want. I think geo damage, it really is up to you, and then you can probably go for a defense circlet if you want. Some people go for crit damage, crit rate. It is completely up to you how much defense you want. You're aiming for about at least 1800 defense. If you can go for 2k, that's a pretty solid defense build for Albedo. And he's also one of the few characters you want to level 90 because his base defense is so much higher at level 90 than it is at level 80. You're unlocking a lot more damage potential at level 90. So make sure that you have enough resources if you're planning to get and build him to get him up to 90. His best in slot for defense, it's not it, is Harbinger of Dawn. I don't have it. I'm very sorry, I don't have it. But Harbinger of Dawn is a 3-star weapon. It's not this. 3-star weapon that basically gives extra crit damage as a second passive, and as long as he has over 90% health, it gives him a 28% crit rate at Refinement 5. And since he thrives as an off DPS support, you're gonna basically have him be off the field most of the time, and the crit rate's gonna help a lot in building. So, unfortunately, I don't have Harbinger. I'll get into that with the hybrid build. Next up is the attack build. So attack build, again, the attack build, you're focusing on his ult. Now, preferably, attack builds are not as common. Some will focus also on his autos, and you can get some physical builds in there, as well as seeing some physical damage Albedos with, like, Prototype Brand Core. And that is also really awesome. All you physical Albedo mains out there, y'all are rocking. So usually attack builds are much rarer. One thing, well, obviously, mainly because, yes, his ult will scale off attack. And at level 10, it's not too bad. The multipliers aren't too bad at all. I mean, it's he's got a really low energy cost. I mean, it's one of the lowest in the game, tied I think with a few others like Zhongli, and it's a low cooldown too. And his autos aren't too bad, but the thing about his autos is that they are really low multipliers. I mean, this is crowned autos, and as you can see, they're not super high. So generally, you don't want to focus too much on that if you want a little bit more damage, but that is up to you. If you're going for attack, again, 2-piece Glad works. Instead of like, oh yeah, defense build can work like Noblesse, Arcade Petra, 4-piece Arcade Petra, again, depends on if you want him as more support. If you're going for attack build, 2-piece Glad or Shinamara, forgive me if I said that wrong, I'm very sorry. Again, go for the Petra mix. You can probably go 4-piece Glad if you want, or however you want to boost his ult. And then obviously crown ult. If you're going for his ult, I would say maybe around 1500 to 1800 attack is good. He doesn't really need that much attack, and obviously a weapon that provides extra attack. Crit rate, crit damage is a good substat. So we got Mist Splitter, you can do Jade Cutter, you can just do basically any sword that gives a lot of attack, gives a lot of crit rate, crit damage, all that sort of stuff, general stuff. And obviously for hybrid builds, again, focus on a sword that can give like maybe Quill of Favonia or Prototype Brand Core that can really help with physical damage bonus. He doesn't do elemental infusion, so you don't have to worry about any kit that, or any action or kit he's gonna have that will interfere with the physical damage. So, and that's the attack build, roughly. The last build is the hybrid build, and there are two kinds. Again, there's like a hybrid Geo / physical damage build. I think I've seen a few builds like that. Again, this is not one of them. My Albedo is not a physical Albedo. I mean, he hits pretty well on physical for not being focused on physical, but there are some people out there that do have a mix of a geophysical Albedo, which is super awesome. Y'all guys rock. But the other hybrid is a defense attack hybrid. And the reason this works, the way it's a little bit different than defense builds or attack builds is the two builds I previously mentioned, defense and attack builds, do a lot more hyper focus on either his skill or his ult. If you're going for a hybrid, you're basically trying to maximize his entire kit, or really reach the potential of his entire kit. So I have a hybrid build basically. As you can see, my attack and my defense are really close to each other. And of course, I try to make sure I have enough crit rate, crit damage, and maximize his geo damage. And one of the best weapons for a hybrid build outside of Harbinger of Dawn is his second best in slot for a hybrid build. The best in slot is Primordial Jade Cutter. Because you get that attack bonus, you get that crit rate, get a little more HP, and that way you can focus much more on his artifacts, which will be obviously 2-piece Petra, 2-piece Geo, Noblesse, and then you want to go for a defense stance. You don't want to go for an attack stance because then you're going to lose a lot more defense on his skill. Defense, Geo, and crit damage, crit rate, depending on what you need more, helps a lot more, obviously. And then, of course, try and triple crown everything, etc., etc. Now, the reason why usually people go for a defense build is when you're going through constellations. Generally, his skill is a lot more powerful than his ult in many different situations, even though his ult has multipliers. Especially, the important constellation you want to focus on when you're going for defense is his C2. The way his C2 works, it's a lot of weird terminology, so I'll just do my best to explain it. So the blossoms generated by his skill grant him Fatal Reckoning for 30 seconds. Then using his ult consumes all stack of those Reckoning. And each stack of Fatal Reckoning consumed increases the damage dealt by Fatal Blossoms and he's basically the Blossom part of his ult and the main burst of his ult by 30% of his defense. And this stacks up to 4 times. So every time, I don't have any secrets. So you do this, put his ult down, his skill down, and then you attack 4 times. There's a cooldown, I think, between. But if you attack 4 times, and you're gonna get a little flower floating around you, like pretend the Sealy is a flower. When you're gonna reach a full flower, you're gonna basically have up to 120% of Albedo's defense ready for his ult. So when his ult is used, all those stacks will be consumed, and again, up to 120% of his defense will be added as extra damage to his ult. So that's where you go for that extra defense, because the higher the defense, the more damage that ult is going to do on top of the attack. Now the thing about his defense though is that it is an additive. It is not a multiplier. So basically you're not gonna do like I don't know, 1 million more damage. You're basically probably gonna do around 5 to 10k more damage on his ult. But that C2 is where the split scaling issues for Albedo usually become resolved for his ult. So you still want to build some attack, but Harbinger of Dawn definitely becomes a lot more viable, since again, he doesn't really need a whole lot of attack in the first place. Despite me having a whole lot of attack on him for his ult. So basically for C0, that's where attack builds become a lot more viable, and hybrid builds are a lot more viable. But when he's C2, you definitely want to focus a lot more on his defense. Now C3 also again helps a lot more defense, since you're basically just boosting his skill. C5 is meh. C4 is if you have a Zhao team comp or something similar, and then C6 obviously if you have a C6 pennant, it becomes quite viable with C6 pennant, but that's besides the point. And then again, roughly for crit rate, crit damage, just aim for like 60-70%, and then like however many crit damage you want. He does ascend with geo damage bonus. So you don't have to worry about needing a lot of extra geo damage aside from the Goblet and the maybe the Petra. For artifact stats, you can focus on, again, it really depends if you want to build him as like a main DPS, as a support, etc. If you want him as more of a DPS, so obviously you got Petra, you got Noblesse, you got Gladiators, we got something in the future I'm not gonna say. All those sort of things that can boost his skill, his ult, etc. Both, wherever you need. If you want to go physical, you can go physical, so on and so forth. If you want more support, he is one of the few that can utilize 4-piece Petra, 4-piece Millelef if you want, and so on and so forth. He's very versatile and depending on which team comp you want. And then what increases it is, again, his second passive, which is Homuncular Nature. So this is where it becomes a lot more viable in reaction comps if you don't have an animal character that can boost EM like Sucrose or Kazuha. So here, he's using his ult, and remember his ult has a low cooldown of like 12 seconds, and he uses it, and it's like 40 energy cost. Using his ult increases the elemental mastery of nearby party members by 125 for 10 seconds. So basically, it's just like And I believe this can be stacked with like Kazahan and all that stuff. So, yep, it's just basically free EM. And obviously that means he'll boost his own shields and whatnot if you do want a little bit more protection. So, it's a stronger passive than people usually think. And then the final one, his other passive, is whenever you craft a weapon essential material, he has a 10% chance to receive double the product. I know some people are super lucky with this. I'm not usually just super lucky when he does it, but when he does it, it's very refreshing. So you do save quite a bit of resin when you use this, but again, the lower chance means you're gonna don't expect it to happen too much. But when it happens, it's like a breath of fresh air. So, and then. Yeah. And that is generally Albedo. So now into team comps. So obviously this is my Zhao team comp. This is one of the more popular team comps usually Albedo is in. And the reason for this is, yes, this is a very expensive team comp. As you can see, it's all 5 stars. But it's a team comp that gets stronger with constellations. I'm going to get stronger. And the reason why Albedo especially works with Anjulie or any of the Geo unit aside from that is the Geo resonance. So Anjulie in particular has this pillar, and the pillar resonates with other nearby Geo constructs. So every couple seconds, especially if you do like a double pillar, you can have like a double resonance like that. If you can time it right, you can have a lot more proc on his skill. So usually having Zhongli is very viable for Albedo. Having a C1 Zhongli, he's minus C2, increases a lot more the damage potential. So that's usually how it's basically just free proc and extra geo damage. And then for like Jean, you got your healer, Zhao, you got your main DPS. Now that's usually the most popular team, I believe, for Albedo. But he can work for, say, he can work with Ball, he can work with Kaching, Yoimiya, Ganyu. He can work with your any main DPS. He can fit into any team because as a Geo unit, it's much more neutral and more defensive. He'll provide the reaction comp, the low extra damage with his skill, and basically, you know, he's just, yeah, basically a Geo official. So. And then, of course, with his constantly, he's also a bit more free to play in that you don't really need his constellations if you don't want them. Again, it really depends on how you want to build them or what teams you want to use them on. Well, you know, like some other characters when you might want more constellations with, like for Zhongli, for example, or Ball, or whatever other C5, C4 characters you need. Albedo's much more flexible in that you can just have him at C0 and he's still a really good character. So, that pretty much concludes it. If you want to see Albedo in action, I will roll the tape.
Let's sing a song full of hope, full of pain. Why don't you sing along, my friend? For it's our last refrain. Forever young, ever strong, ever brave. Memories like this never end. No, they don't fade away. So when I'm gone, oh, when I'm gone, I'll be right there, close to the sun. Keep holding on, keep holding on, and I'll be right there, close to the sun, close to the sun. Close to the sun. Here's to the ones who let shine through the rain, the ones who stood for something more. We won't forget your names. The tide is high, say goodbye, we're setting sail, and all those midnight secrets told, we'll take them to the grave. So when I'm gone, oh, when I'm gone, I'll be right there, close to the sun. to the sun. Close to the sun. Keep holding on, keep holding on. And I'll be right there, close to the sun.